All right, we welcome sports reporter Annie Agar of Wood TV 8 in Grand Rapids and the in-game sideline reporter for the Grand Rapids Drive. But maybe most notably, she is the creator of the popular, the first one at least, I think it was, the Big Ten Zoom meeting videos, among a bunch of others. But thanks for joining the show first off. But my first question is this. So how did you even come up with this idea? Because it is, honestly, it's super creative, and it seems like a lot of people are trying to almost like copy it in a way because it is kind of the first one of its kind.
Thank you. Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Yeah, the idea kind of came from, during quarantine when this whole thing first started, I wasn't working, and as a sports reporter, obviously that hit hard, many other people in the sports industry, but I thought about automatically, how football season was going to be impacted. And when it comes to, the Big Ten, we like to think about how all these teams have a different dynamic and, they all tend to hate each other, but they all wanted to work towards the same goal, which is to have a football season. So I started thinking just in all my free time that I had sitting at home, how they would be working towards getting that football season back up and running. And obviously the only thing we have right now are Zoom calls, or I guess during quarantine, that was the only thing we had. So I thought, if the Big Ten wanted to get things going, a Zoom call would be the appropriate, situation to be put in. And if that was the case, how that would look. Because, like I said, they all have this insane dynamic where we all like to poke fun at each other, and there's the, in-conference rivalries. So I just started thinking, how can I replicate that and then put it out there for the public? And that's kind of how the video started.
So who of all, obviously, speaking of the Big Ten, Kirk Herbstreit, Ohio State great, and play-by-play or color commentator great. He reached out to you and said that he loves the videos. Is he number one on the list of people that have been pretty sweet to see them kind of say that it's funny stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. Kirk was obviously a big thing for me because I'm, an Ohio State fan at heart, so that was pretty impressive to hear from him. But I've had, Rich Eisen has reached out, Pat Forty has reached out, those kind of, it's everybody that didn't. Dan Orlovsky actually just likes my most recent one. So it's people that in the industry that I looked up to that I'm somehow in their eyesight, I guess, on social media, and that is so big for me. So that's when I really feel it's surreal, and I think, wow, like I'm actually getting out there. It's crazy.
Yeah. I know Matt was telling me off microphone that today, the most recent one you posted, just blew up. Before we get to that, I want to ask about that, but this is a general old guy question here for you. Give us a little background so our listeners know, your background at college and what you're doing nowadays, along with these. Yeah,
so I graduated from Grand Valley with a sports broadcasting and pre-law major and then a minor in business. I wanted to get into reporting. Didn't really, I had an idea of digital content because, in this changing world, everything's digital now. You can get clips on, like ESPN clips on your phone instead of having to watch SportsCenter, all this kind of stuff. So it's just transitioning a lot. So I obviously wanted to be a sports reporter, but then when everything kind of stopped in, mid-March, I turned to digital content. And so that's kind of how all this started. But my goal, obviously, is still to be, I want to be either sideline or be some sort of reporter for either a team or, NFL Live or, ESPN, something like that. But yeah, it all started with my drive, my ambition to be a sports reporter, and then the digital content stuff kind of came to the side of that, I guess.
So, yeah, Ted brought it up, the video that you just shared. I mean, we're recording Monday night, and about an hour ago, you mentioned Dan Orlovsky liked and commented on it, but the last I checked, right before we started recording, it was already over 60,000 views. So, within an hour, it's kind of blown up already. ESPN has shared your videos, Bleacher Report, and a bunch of other NFL handles and stuff like that. So you used the word surreal a few minutes ago. Is it, is that the best word to describe it? That, this is just seeing notifications from ESPN and stuff, sharing your content. Is it just kind of surreal to see that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't think of a different word to use. Yeah, even tonight, so I had the idea to do a Week 2 video because someone, I guess several people last week had commented when I did the Week 1 video on the NFL. They said, this has to be a series. We need one every week. And then this week I thought, well, I don't know. I don't want to overdo it. But then there was so much great content from this weekend, NFL game-wise, so I thought I'll just, I'll put one out there. And it has blown my mind how it just, if you just sit there and watch it, the retweets are just, they're constantly going. And it just is so surreal for me to see that. And then to have guys like, Orlovsky and, just other, like you said, Bleacher Report. ESPN was the big one where I thought, holy cow. Because I had a couple of my friends text me that they'd gotten this update, saying, when it had my name on it, that's what the super weird thing was, to see the ESPN logo with my name right by it. Because as I'm sure Jared could tell you, that's been my goal for so long, to have that kind of credibility, I guess. So it's just been so cool to see. And yeah, surreal is definitely the word I would use.
So how long does it take to put one of these together? I mean, it's really well edited. You have to change your shirt about 400 times, your outfit and stuff like that. So how long does it take?
That's a good question. So a lot of people ask too. They were like, "Oh, did you buy all these shirts?" And I'm like, "No, I do not own. I do not own half those shirts. I actually print off the logos and I glue them onto the shirts.
Oh, okay.
Random T-shirts. But I do. I change in between each one because. And somebody asked, they said, you probably tape everything in that shirt and then just splice it together. But I like to get in the character of each team, I guess, or of each shirt. So I'll change it between each one. So it takes probably, with the printing off the logos and cutting them out, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. And sometimes it depends on if I have an idea in my head already or if I kind of just go with the flow of playing off the character that was before me and all that. So it's a very interesting progression of how it all comes together. But at the end of it, I'm pretty happy with them. So
yeah, well, they are really cool. Transitioning sort of to more high school football. You're also a high school football sideline reporter, videographer. What was it like this past Friday shooting a game where there was only each player was allowed 2 guys in the stands? Did it feel like it had the same vibe, or do you think it's kind of lacking a little bit this year?
Right. Going into this weekend, practices already were super strange, and I covered a lot of practices this past weekend. And teams were, super, everybody was wearing a mask, super careful going into practice. But then when it came to game time, the stadium or the school can only control so much. And for us as shooters and reporters, we could only be inside between the 10-yard line and the end zone and couldn't really go sideline at all. Couldn't be by the players at all or anything like that. And then, the fans in the stands were social distance, but that did not stop people from, coming into the outfield of the game to the, around the track or wherever they could get to without being inside the stadium. So as weird as it was to see the stands kind of empty, and I was out in Muskegon, so I covered the Mona Shores game, and that, they usually have a packed house. Yeah. So to see stands empty for that was super strange, but you still had the crowd cheering and the excitement around it when there's, third down and stuff like that. So as strange as I thought it would be, it wasn't as big of a transition. Maybe for the guys it was different, for the players, but yeah, as a media person it was a Friday night under the lights. We were just happy to be back.
Hey, Annie, let me ask you a little deeper question, all right? Being a lady in sports, that's your future ambition, your goal. You obviously have to see what's been going on with Maria Taylor, and let's just call it a good old boys thing right now. You're trying to get in there, but there's a lot of people that are just ignorant. How do you deal with that? How are you looking forward? How you're going to deal with that? And are you getting much from Twitter trolls?
I love that question. So interestingly enough, when this, when I started doing these videos, there were, and it got the one that got on ESPN, there were definitely comments of, guys that wouldn't have happened had it been a guy on the camera instead of myself. But I kind of knew going into this industry, I'd seen how women were treated, and and there's a lot of positives, but there also were a lot of negatives. And I always thought, I am not going into this industry to be treated like a guy. I'm going in as a female, knowing what's going to happen. And I want the credit of being in the industry because I worked my butt off, not because I'm a female. And I don't want the pity of people saying oh, well, you wouldn't get these comments if you're a guy. I get it. I'm a female in the industry, but if I don't, darned if I don't know more than half those guys in the industry. And that's kind of how I'm going to go on the defensive side. I growing up an Ohio State fan in Michigan, I already had to defend myself to the 10th degree. So I like to think that, when this criticism hits me or when guys come forward and they say, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about, I'll just smile and say, okay, bring it on. Okay. So hopefully, and the thing with Maria Taylor, and she, handled that really gracefully and then kind of put her foot down. But the same kind of thing happens. If some comment were to go to a guy like that, I'd expect them to do the same thing. You got to stand up for what you know because you're in that position and other people aren't. So
one quick little follow-up. Have you run into much of that yet?
Not so much on my personal when I tweet out videos, but definitely when ESPN and Barstool did, it was tough to hear some things, but that's going to happen everywhere. Criticism is just a natural response. So
yeah, but how does mom and dad deal with it?
Oh, my dad! I had to get my dad off Twitter. he was going to start commenting to everybody, so I had to get him off.
No, I think that is just the perfect answer, and it's so cool to hear you say that because, I mean, I think we talked about it. I work at ESPN, so I'll admit it. This is a little bit of a company man comment, but I am really proud to work for ESPN because they're clearly embracing diversity, and they always have. And I've been here for almost 10 years, and I've always seen that, embracing diversity and actually, like, encouraging it. And you mentioned NFL Live earlier. Laura Rutledge is the new host, and Mina Kimes is on the show, and Maria Taylor is doing NBA Countdown and Monday Night Football and big college football games. So yeah, I mean, I think you're putting yourself out there, but also recognizing what you might face is a big thing. So, I mean, I think that's kudos to you that you're coming into it with that mindset already.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, ESPN has been so good at that, too. And I wouldn't think that I could get a job in that industry if it weren't for the people that I grew up watching, Hannah Storm and just everybody that, especially Maria Taylor, is just such an idol for me. But seeing them on the big stage, I never looked at it and thought, oh, this is a male-dominant industry, or this is, they're super inclusive. I just saw it as that's what I want to do someday.
So how did you end up, this is something I've been kind of wondering about. So you're from Michigan. How did you end up being an Ohio State fan? What's the story with that? Are you a bandwagon fan?
Oh, I knew that word was going to No, so actually, I became an Ohio State fan right before the sanctions, so I like to say that I joined a sinking ship instead of a bandwagon. But no, I loved Evan Turner back when he played for Ohio State, obviously, and kind of mentioned it being, in Michigan, and I wanted to talk sports throughout high school, and guys would take you a lot more seriously. I learned this really quickly if you disagreed with them, because, if you agreed with them, they'd be like, well, of course you say that.
Yep.
I said that. But then if I disagreed, I'd really have to prove myself, and they would find that, it would be their life goal to prove me wrong. So I would come home on the weekends, and I'd watch every second of football, and I would make sure I knew every stat and every player, and just, make sure I was prepared for Monday when I went back to school. So I think that was a big part of the preparation. But then, being able to be kind of against Michigan and Michigan State and be kind of the odd person out was super fun for me. And obviously it's been to my benefit recently because, we kind of have a good team. So
Yeah, for sure. So do you have any problem with how the Big Ten kind of handled COVID, where how they canceled the season, and then obviously they just brought it back last week to October 24th? Do you agree with the decision to bring it back?
Yeah, so I thought it was just super strange, and I don't know the ins and outs, obviously, of what everybody in the Big Ten organization was dealing with, but it almost was like I think they wanted to kind of set the tone for everybody else, thinking that the SEC and the ACC would immediately be like, yep, okay, Big Ten's out, we're out too. But then when they saw, other than the Pac-12 kind of following in their footsteps, I think they were like, shoot, maybe we shouldn't have done this. And then obviously you had the fans calling for their heads, and the players wanting to play, and the parents, and I think it kind of didn't leave it up to any other choice, but other than to say, yeah, we're going to play football. So I think in the beginning, their idea was it was a good idea maybe, and they had the best intentions, but it just didn't work out that way. And honestly, I think if you would have started play, and then if something were to happen, if an outbreak would happen, then you cancel the season. But at least you showed fans and parents and players that you were invested. So I think it could have been handled better, but you never know what's going on with them. So
you're building up quite a resume at a young age, Annie, and I just want to ask this one question. If you had your preference, when you move into the big time, is it NBA basketball, NFL football? Do you have a preference sports-wise?
Oh, definitely football. College game day. I wanted to be on College game day since I was like 5 years old. But NFL also holds a special place in my heart too. So honestly, it's anything football related. And ironically, that's the one sport I didn't play. I don't know why I'm so invested in football, but it's hard not to be. It's one of the best.
It's a great sport.
In the world, so.
No, I definitely think you're building up, like Ted said, a heck of a resume. So it seems like you're well on your way. I want to get back real quick though, before we maybe start to get you out of here, to West Michigan. So you mentioned Grand Valley State, and then you worked at the NBC affiliate in Grand Rapids. Jared went to Grand Valley. I am a Grand Valley alum. Jared worked at Fox 17 and has done some stuff for them. I worked at Fox 17 for 3 years. I loved West Michigan. If it wouldn't have been a job opportunity at ESPN, I would not have probably left West Michigan in Grand Rapids. Can you talk about working over on that side of the state and going to Grand Valley and how nice of a school that was? And it's just such a nice area in the state that, it draws people to it, and the high school football is great, and the athletics are great, and the lake is there. I mean, how nice is it on the west side of the state over there?
Yeah, honestly, there is no, and I've been to quite a few places, there's no place that compares to here. And I know that sounds super biased, but, you have the beach town, and I would tell, like recruits coming into Grand Valley and all this stuff, the same thing. You have beach towns at like Grand Haven along the water. You're half an hour away from hitting a beach that feels like the ocean. Then you've got the city with Grand Rapids. You have great minor league sports teams, the Whitecaps, the Drive, the Griffins, and it feels like this bigger city within a small city. So you don't feel like you're just a number, but then you don't feel like you're, out in the boonies somewhere. But then you do have, farming community, and you have all these suburban areas, and it's almost like the best of every situation wrapped up in a city. And that's why I knew I wanted to go to Grand Valley, was because it was so, it was such a big part of the community already. It's so close. And I toured it, and right away just fell in love with it. It's super close to the water and close to the city, and the sports teams were great there, and their D2, could be D1 possibly, but they're a great D2 program, and I just loved every opportunity at Grand Valley. And like you said, the city is just, it's unmatched. There's no other city in the world, I feel like, that's like Grand Rapids. So as hard as it would be maybe to leave someday, I want to be in ESPN at Bristol and stuff like that. So as hard as that might be, it's a great city on the west side here.
Well, Annie, I'll tell you what, we appreciate the time. We look forward. Hopefully you don't forget us, and you'll join us again down the road.
Not a chance. That's a Grand Valley alums. I can't forget you.
There you go. And then also, before we wrap up, tell our listeners best spots to follow you.
Oh, okay, perfect. On Twitter, I'm at Annie Agar. Agar is the last name. And then on Instagram, it's Annie Agar 5, and TikTok is the same thing, Annie Agar 5.
Outstanding. Well, we really appreciate the time. Love your stuff. We'll keep looking at it, and we'll check in with you down the road.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. It's been great.
Thank you.
That was good stuff talking with Annie. And Jared, you went to school with her and know her personally and all that, right?
I didn't go to school with her, but working at Fox 17 in Grand Rapids while she was working at the rival station, we usually would end up at a lot of the same games. And when you're shooting, you usually shoot from the same angles and stuff, so you kind of get to know a person through that.
Well, she's definitely on her way. And speaking on their way, why don't you head over to Sheridan Auction Service? They always have a great variety of items in real estate on the docket. Go online at SheridanAuctionService.com for their information on upcoming auctions. The house is packed with all kinds of great items. Stay up to date by checking their website at SheridanAuctionService.com. And they have a sweet-looking 1964 Corvette Stingray going to be auctioned off. Check that out. Also, Nelson House Funeral Homes. Their number one goal is to serve the families in our community. Their top priority is caring for our friends and neighbors, being right there when you need them the most. They're the best in the business, I gotta tell you. For more details, see them on the web at nelson-house.com. And our favorite gathering place to watch sports, that's Rivals Tap House and Grill, the official sports bar of 3 Point Podcast. They're open for dine-in service again. Full menu, specialize in pub sandwiches, all kinds of drink specials. Come on out for the Thursday bike nights and the great first of the month parties. Rivals Tap House and Grill in Corunna.